Welcome back, everyone, to another reaction video. Well, this is not a video that I get recommended daily, but it has been happening often enough here and there that it's kind of stayed in the back of my mind. And as I am in the process of recording the next 3 weeks worth of content, since a week from now I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks, I've been making a list of everything that people have been recommending to me over time. So if you have an idea, now's the chance to do it. Because as this video goes up today, I'm going to be recording 4 more videos worth of reactions each day for the next several days. So recommend all that you can right now, even if it's a channel I've never checked out before, and that is the case today. I'm aware of the existence of this channel. I know nothing about this channel. My kids probably do. I don't. It's called The Game Theorist. They have 19 million subscribers, so obviously a lot of you guys are familiar with it. And this video is called Game Theory: Which U.S. President is an Epic Gamer? I have absolutely no idea what I'm getting into. Haven't seen this video or any other video from this channel. So I'm really curious to see what it's going to be all about. I'll put the link in the description, as I always do, so that you can check out this channel and support them and see this particular video without my commentary. Here we go. Five Nights at Freddy's, huh? This I am familiar with.
Gee, Sleepy Joe, that's Freddy Fazbear. That sound means he's getting closer to the office.
Why can't we just leave this pizza place? Can't we just get some ice cream?
Because, Joe, that's the whole point of the game. You can't leave. That's what makes it scary.
Guys, can you keep it down?
I feel like, just generationally speaking, of those three, Obama would be the best gamer.
I'm trying to concentrate.
Geez, Pat, you're using a lot of power. You wouldn't last 1 minute playing 2020 mode, which I totally beat on my first try, by the way.
Donald, you're so full of it, you probably died during the night one phone call. But Pat, you should be checking cams more to make sure Foxy stays in Pirates Cove.
Mr. President, you might know about foreign policy, but Five Nights at Freddy's, it's kind of my territory. Sit back, watch how the master does it.
Ah, the jump scare.
Wow, you suck at this game.
Seriously.
Good thing you don't have a Let's Play channel.
So I'm guessing we're going to get a lot more of that kind of stuff because of AI and the ability of AI to do voices. And we are entering a strange new world when it comes to what you can believe and what you can't.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the Uncle Sam of the Internet that wants you to subscribe for memey videos that no one in their right mind would ask for. And oh boy, do we have a weird episode for you today. Lately, I've been gorging myself on the latest trend to strike the Internet: US presidents playing video games. I don't know if this one's reached your corner of the Internet yet, but we now have
Trump, Biden, and Obama play Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, that's fascinating. So it's interesting that those are the particular three that we focus on, but I guess going back 15 years, so I mean, for the life of most of the under 18 crowd, which I'm guessing is a big chunk of who consumes content on YouTube, those are the three presidents that they know in their lifetimes.
Ourselves videos of Obama, Trump, and Biden all getting on a Discord call together to put aside their political differences and just enjoy a round of Minecraft with the boys. Kinda. Obviously, these aren't real presidents checking their KD ratios. Instead, these are creators taking voice clips of previous presidents and feeding them into AI text-to-speech software and AI voice filters so they can then make the president say whatever they want him to say. So naturally, the internet did the only logical thing you would do with that sort of power. They turned them into gamers. They've played Mario Party, they've debated Smash tier lists, they've even argued about the FNAF timeline.
Obviously, Elizabeth Afton died before Five Nights at Freddy's 4. Why else?
That makes no sense to me, but those are the kinds of conversations that I hear from my son Eli. He's always talking about this family, the Aftons, and Five Nights at Freddy. I watched the movie with them, but beyond that, I don't know much of the lore of this stuff.
Why else would her bedroom be empty? She's dead, Joe.
Donald, that makes zero sense. Just because Elizabeth's bedroom is empty does not mean that she's dead.
This is kind of making me regret not inviting President Biden to our recent live FNAF talk back. Would have loved to hear his thoughts on the recent ID's fantasy video. Anyway, my recommended tab has been filled to the brim of my Abe Lincoln stovepipe hat with this sort of stuff. And personally, I am all about it. And after losing days of my life to binging these videos, naturally that dumb side of my theory brain started to kick into gear, and I couldn't help but wonder, what if the real presidents actually played these games? And more importantly, who would actually be the best? And I'm not just talking about the modern three that we see kicking around.
I'm really curious to see what his criteria are going to be for this.
On these videos, I'm talking about all the presidents, all 45 of the past US executives in chief. And for those of you heading down to the comments right now to say that Biden is the 46th president, clearly you've forgotten about President Cleveland, who was elected to 2 non-consecutive terms, thereby making him both our 22nd and 24th president. Thus, Biden is only the 45th person to ever be US president.
So this actually is relevant today, this whole thing about how we count Grover Cleveland twice because he had Benjamin Harrison in there in between his 2 terms, is because if in the event that we get, because we have a rematch now coming up between Trump and Biden, if Trump gets reelected, he will be again one of those non-consecutive presidents. So at that point, he would become the 45th and 47th president.
That is the first of many little history nuggets that we'll be exploring in this episode, dear theorists, so let's fire up our time machines, hop onto the Discord with the boys, and whip out those gamer headsets. It's time to inaugurate our first ever Gamer-in-Chief. So, to start off with, how exactly are we going to settle this one? Almost all of our presidents were born way before the invention of...
So here's what's interesting to me is because when you start talking about presidents in terms of physical ability, some presidents we've had have been very good athletes, very good fighters, things like that. First of all, those 3 that you see on the screen right there, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, not only probably in the conversation for the top 3 presidents of all time. Certainly, pretty much everybody puts them in their top 5. But also, arguably, 3 of our best athletes who have been presidents. And we've had others. Gerald Ford was an actual college football star. But Lincoln was an incredible wrestler. Theodore Roosevelt was known to have had boxing matches at the White House. George Washington, in his youth, was very physically fit. So I'll be interested to see how they use physical factors in terms of figuring out gaming ability.
The TVs and computers, let alone video games. In fact, only Barack Obama was born after the creation of the first video game, and this is what that one looked like. So, not exactly fertile ground for our potential POTUS players. That being said, the presidents were pretty talented people. They ascended to the highest office in the land to become leader of the free world. They're obviously gonna be good at some stuff, right? But which of the traits are actually gonna help them become the kings of Kong, the sultans of Smash, the maestros of Mario? Well, let's just go through some of the skills that we know make good gamers, and then look through the historical records to see if any of our presidents can fit the mold of the most elitist of gamers.
So, a couple of questions I have right off the bat is, I guess it depends on what kind of game. If we're talking about strategy gaming, obviously then I'm going to put a Eisenhower near the top, or a Grant, just in terms of their strategic ability and their ability to do logistics and kind of play those paradox type games. Those are the guys I want for that job. If we're talking more a game like chess, then you're going to want your very intelligent players. Of course, there's strategy there involved as well. Intelligent guys, we're thinking of people like Bill Clinton, who was super intelligent, and James Garfield, and we've had other presidents who have been just really, really, really smart over time. Some games require just good RPG skills. So I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but even just in terms of me personally, I'm going to be 47 this year. I'm not as good at first-person shooters as I was 10 or 15 years ago. I can tell that I'm not old, I get that, but I've lost a step or two when it comes to my hand-eye coordination. So some of these presidents being older when they were president, I think that kind of plays into this too.
Fortunately for us, there's been a huge surge of research into what actually makes the best gamers. Finally, we're getting ourselves some scientific recognition. And one of the key things that studies have pointed to is raw intelligence. With so many players playing video games these days, there's a collective desire to find out the most elaborate and efficient strategies. That means that the amount of information you have to juggle at once is higher than ever before. Feels like you kind of need a PhD in Pokemon battling just to be able to play versus battles online, let alone competing in real-life tournaments.
I gave my Screamtail enough investment to outspeed Choice Scarf Annihilate. Then I invested enough in its defense to allow it to survive Adamant Life Orb Max Attack King Gambit Iron Head, which is a very powerful, super effective attack.
And see, this is what I love playing multiplayer online games, but I'll never excel in any of them because there's always going to be this group of people who are just insanely addicted to a particular game and have put tens of thousands of hours into that game, and you'll never be able to compete with that on the scale that some of these people can.
Were those even words? Whatever they were, a study from the University of York did end up showing a strong correlation between players who were best at MOBA games like League of Legends and Dota 2 and how they performed on IQ tests, with the most skilled players having the highest IQ scores. So if the top gamers are the ones with the highest IQs, which of our American presidents is ready to pull off those big-brained plays? Enter Keith Simonton, a professor out of UC Davis who published a study back in 2006 in the Journal of Political Psychology where he attempted to calculate the IQ and other traits of all the presidents.
Now, attempt is a great point here because there's absolutely no way that we can possibly know this with any degree of certainty. All of it's going to be speculation. Obviously, for a game or for a video like this, we have to use something. So, I'm not going to nitpick this too much, but I understand that the accessibility of information is limited, especially the further we go back.
From George Washington to George W. Bush. He did this by analyzing their speeches and other public records. It's not like he could go out and give Millard Fillmore an IQ test or anything.
The trouble, of course, is that not all these presidents wrote their own speeches and things like that.
The presidents that occupied his top spots probably aren't too surprising. You've got Thomas Jefferson, writer of the Declaration of Independence, John F. Kennedy, who was able to read 1,200 words per minute, which is 5 times the human average, and Franklin Pierce, a president that none of us remember, but who had himself a pretty solid memory considering he memorized his entire 3,300 word inaugural address by heart. To give you
That's true, and that was probably about the most, the best thing he did as president. It was all downhill from there. I say this all the time, but a lot of people consider him one of the most attractive presidents. Not personally attracted to men, so I can't really say, but...
To give you some context, a typical game theory script is about 3,500 words, so this guy has got Rosalina is Peach's daughter theory on lock. All that being said though, standing alone at the top of the IQ leaderboard with a skull-shattering IQ of 175, it's our 6th president, John Quincy Adams. 175 IQ is higher than one of the most notable smart men in history, Mr. Albert Einstein.
One factor, obviously, there's other factors involved, but he was also one of our most qualified presidents just in terms of his experience and the political offices he held. Very underrated.
So, you know, if you put JQA into the MOBA arena, he's gonna stomp on the competition. But obviously IQ isn't the be-all, end-all here. The study even acknowledges this. While players with the highest IQ scores were the best at MOBAs like League of Legends and Dota, there wasn't a strong correlation between intellect and more action-based games like first-person shooters. While MOBAs rely on memory and strategic decisions, first-person shooters have a focus on speed and target accuracy. And if our gamer president is gonna dominate the entire gaming scene, he's gonna need a little of both. And knowing that, one skill that is useful for a wide variety of games is reaction time. Your typical gamer has a reaction time somewhere between 300 and 500 milliseconds, but professional gamers, the top echelon of the gaming world, they have themselves some superhuman reflexes. They top out with reaction times under 200 milliseconds.
Big difference.
That tenth of a second difference there is literally the blink of an eye. And while that might not sound like much, that gap can end up being the difference between getting the clutch kill and getting demoted to Silver 5 in Overwatch again.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. When I've, in the last few years, tried to play games like Call of Duty, I find myself just like that half second behind the person who just is able to get the drop on me. And it makes all the difference in the world.
Now, we've talked on this channel before about how age can affect your reaction time. Research has been done that shows your reaction times peak in your early to mid-20s and then starts to slowly drop off as you get older.
100%.
Considering you can't even become president until you're 35, it means that all of our options are outside of their prime. Younger presidents like Teddy Roosevelt, JFK, and Bill Clinton might have a better shot, but none of them are going to be ideal.
And you can add into that list guys like, I think Franklin Pierce was pretty young. Polk wasn't that old. Garfield wasn't that old. I think Garfield was only 49 when he died. So I guess this is a good idea if you're going to rate this. I mentioned this earlier, the importance of age as a factor in gaming.
Do we have any other evidence of presidents demonstrating S-tier reaction times? I mean, I guess there was that one time that George W. Bush
dodged the
not
shoe.
just one, but
That was pretty
two
good.
shoes that were thrown at him by an Iraqi journalist.
My favorite part of that video is the fact that Bush is like half smiling the whole time. Now I don't know if he's legit amused by this or if that's his kind of awkward way of trying to put on a brave face when there's a moment where you're like, I don't know if this is a serious issue or not.
During a speech in 2008, that was
But he's
pretty
like,
impressive.
I'm all right.
Not only did he dodge attacks from the local Foot Locker, he then had the gamer instincts to identify their size.
If you want the facts, it's a size 10 shoe that he threw.
That being said, if you're looking for something a little more legitimate than dodging some Air Jordans, then just call for Daddy. Bush's daddy, to be specific. George H.W. Bush was a pilot during World War II, flying a General
Not only a pilot in World War II, he was the youngest Navy pilot.
Motors TBM Avenger during the war, a plane that could reach
Youngest
speeds
Navy
of
pilot to be shot
276
down.
miles per hour or 123 meters a second. In that blink of an eye, 100 milliseconds, he'd have traveled 40 feet, 12 meters. That's the length of a full-sized school bus, which could be fatal if he doesn't react fast enough. But he managed to fly over 58 combat missions, including earning the Distinguished Flying Cross after surviving a dangerous mission that left most of the other pilots that went out dead. All in all, it means that once Pappy Bush gets a hold of that controller, there's no stopping him. But if I had to bet 20 bucks on which president would be the best when it came to reaction time, well, I'd bet on Mr. 20 himself, bloody Andrew Jackson. Because what's faster than a speeding plane? A speeding bullet. Jackson was never too afraid to line up against anyone who crossed him in a good old-fashioned duel. Now, these weren't the quick draws that you see in old Western movies, but instead tended to follow either British or French rules. Opponents would either stand opposite each other, guns pointed, and then fire when the signal was given, or they would stand back to back and take a set amount of paces before turning and firing. A la Hamilton.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, number 10 paces, fire!
Or more recently, John Wick 4.
Yeah, and actually I think in the Hamilton case, they actually did use the one where they were standing facing each other. They would be given an order to present, and then they would fire. It's not like we typically see with the back-to-back thing.
Regardless, both required you to be able to react quickly while also having incredible accuracy. Now, we don't know for sure which of these types of duels Jackson participated in, but some estimates suggest that he survived over 100, which means that his reaction time had to be pretty spot on. Now,
But it also means that he was prone to rage quitting, because that's just who he was.
of course, video games aren't just about hitting the buttons the quickest. Daphne Vavelier, a professor of brain and cognitive sciences at the University of Rochester, showed that gamers perform significantly better on tests of attention, speed, accuracy, vision, and most importantly of all, multitasking
Makes
when
sense.
compared to their non-gamer peers. Games nowadays are demanding...
Now, if we're going to talk multitasking, I don't know if anybody tops Garfield. Being able to write Latin with one hand and Greek with the other at the same time.
more and more of our attentional resources and requiring us to split it amongst various different tasks and objectives. Long gone are the Atari days where you just had a little triangle shooting asteroids. Whether it's analyzing your opponent's moves in Smash or juggling 50 different animatronic attack patterns in Custom Night, a true gamer needs to be able to manage multiple things at once in order to win. So who among our presidential players has demonstrated some high-level multitasking abilities? Well, there's always President Lyndon Johnson, who used to have meetings while sitting on the toilet.
I don't know if I'd call that multitasking, but I knew that's where he was going with that.
Door open in front of his staff.
Yeah.
I guess that's a type of multitasking. All of these men are just the worst, aren't they? There are also other more normal examples, like John F. Kennedy, who would draw little sailboats during intense meetings, which is a little concerning to think about.
I don't know how much that's multitasking and more that's just a sign of how his brain worked than he needed to doodle. My daughter was that way. She would need to doodle and things like that while she was in class. I've always been that way. I've never been able to just sit and do one thing. If I'm watching TV, I'm usually doing something on the computer at the same time. If I'm doing something on the computer, I'm usually listening to music at the same time. I'm always doing more than one thing. I think some people's brains just work that way.
About, like, was he doodling catamarans during the Cuban Missile Crisis? Although I guess he got the job done, so we can't really fault him on that one. But it's one thing to be able to do two tasks that involve different areas of the brain. It's another to be
Garfield.
able to do two tasks that involve the same part of the brain, which is exactly what Bill Clinton would do. He would have himself some serious political conversations with advisors while also solving the New York Times crossword puzzle. I mean, it's pretty hard to do two things that both require language processing. The wires are going to get easily crossed, which thereby makes what Billy C did that much more impressive. In a video game, Clinton...
But in that case, I don't know. I feel like if it was important meeting, I wouldn't be doing a crossword puzzle because I'm not giving my full attention to it. I don't know if I say that's a good thing, but yeah, maybe.
Would be able to take in everything that's going on, but still have the brain power to start trash talking the competition. And speaking of, I think we can all agree, even if science doesn't reflect it, trash talk, an essential part of that gamer experience.
And Reggie, for being the president of Nintendo, you suck at Smash Bros.
So I spend 16 hours a day running a company. You spend 16 hours a day playing Smash. So
if presidents of Nintendo need to trash talk to be the best, well then presidents of America need to do the same. And let's be honest with ourselves, most presidential campaigns at this point are just chances for them to trash talk each other.
You mentioned the Navy, for example, and that we have fewer ships than we did in 1916. Well, Governor, we also have fewer horses and bayonets because the nature of our military's changed.
I have as much experience in the Congress as Jack Kennedy did.
Oh, you're no Jack Kennedy.
Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy.
And when it comes to the absolute king of trash talk, there's no one else to choose but William Henry Harrison. During the election of 1840, Harrison and his VP pick John Tyler were running to unseat President Martin Van Buren. Harrison's campaign released a 12-verse diss track that, let me just play you a little clip of it.
Tippecanoe and Tyler too was William Henry Harrison's campaign slogan. Tippecanoe was a battle he fought at where he led the U.S. forces, John Tyler being his vice president. That's pretty good, but man, you got to look at some of the disses that were going on in the time of John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. I don't know if anybody can top the political smack that was going on in the first 50 years of our country.
Yeah, this guy was dropping bars way before Lin-Manuel Miranda. It's no surprise with sick beats like that, they did end up beating little Van Buren, and then Harrison died a month into office after catching pneumonia. But hey, now at least he can be remembered for more than just shortest tenure in office. Outside of trash talk, there's also some other oddball skills here. Herbert Hoover, today mostly known for his botched response to the Great Depression in the Hoover Dam, was the original Minecraft streamer. I mean, prior to being president, he got rich as a mining scout and engineer. Just had a sixth sense for finding gold. This man would have had a full enchanted gold armor set before you put down your first crafting table. And the last thing that I gotta call out here is that no matter how good you are as a gamer, eventually you're gonna fail. But what's important is having the determination to get back up. And there's one president I think demonstrates this better than anyone, because he literally got back up after being shot. On October 14th, 1912, while campaigning to become president, Teddy Roosevelt was shot while giving a speech.
In Milwaukee.
The bullet went through his glasses case, his 50-page speech, and then lodged itself in his chest. Not only did he survive, he was like, yeah, I suppose I'm not coughing up blood or anything, so I'm probably okay. And he went on to finish the dang speech.
I think he was actually on his way to the speech when he was shot. He hadn't actually started it yet, but he gives the speech, and actually at the beginning he says, I don't know if you're aware, but I've just been shot. But it'll take more than that to stop a bull moose, and that's actually where they get the idea for the name of his third-party candidacy, the Bull Moose Party. And just a couple of other quick things about this that I've always found interesting. He's not the first president to carry a bullet in him. I believe Andrew Jackson also had a bullet in him from a duel that he carried the rest of his life. If they had left James Garfield's bullet in him instead of trying to dig it out and treat him, he probably would have survived. And in one of the very rare moments in which you will hear me compliment something that Woodrow Wilson did. Remember, this is a three-way race between three men who had all either been president or would become president. Might be the only time in history we've had something like that. Yeah, there's probably others, but William Howard Taft and Woodrow Wilson, who were the other two candidates in that 1912 election, actually stopped campaigning until Roosevelt had recovered sufficiently to be able to campaign himself. So I always thought that was a very touching thing to do.
That's not gamer determination, I don't know what is. The problem is, all these fun facts and pieces of scientific research are interesting, but I still feel no closer to figuring out the answer. There isn't really a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to finding our best gamer president. There are some skills that may be suited to one game or another, but no one's truly the best at all of them. So maybe I've been looking at the question all wrong. Maybe the gamer president isn't the best in a single category, but is consistently good across all of the board, with the most well-rounded stats across all the things that we just talked about. And during during my research, there was one guy that absolutely fit the bill. The gamer energy runs deep with this one. It runs so deep that his great-grandson is actually the inventor of Magic the Gathering, the OG trading card game. The undisputed ultimate gamer president would have to be, drumroll please, President Garfield.
Yes,
James Garfield.
First of all, I didn't know that his great-grandson invented Magic the Gathering, which I find really interesting as our only ordained minister president, that a guy would have something to do with magic, but I'm overanalyzing it. But I'm so glad, because I've mentioned him over and over again. Super intelligent. He's young. He's only in his 40s. He was a strategist because he was a general in the Civil War. Fits the bill perfectly. And he's one of 2 presidents from Northeast Ohio.
Garfield, the 20th president of the United States. But yeah, even his name is a meme. Fun fact, by the way, the lasagna-loving feline came afterwards, actually named after the creator's grandfather, who himself was named after President Garfield. Now, not only is this man rocking out the gamer beard, James Garfield was smart, like really smart, boasting around 150 IQ, ranking him in the top 10 of presidents, and also puts him on par with inventor Thomas Edison. Sure, it's not Einstein level,
who's also from Ohio. Anyway, I digress.
But that's still pretty dang solid. Plus, he proved his nerdiness beyond just raw IQ. During Garfield's 9 terms in Congress, he developed a proof for the Pythagorean theorem using trapezoids. This wasn't just a fun little back-of-the-napkin calculation either. He had it published in the New England Journal of Education, and he did it while shooting the breeze with his colleagues in the congressional cafeteria. Intelligence, my name is Garfield.
So yeah, he does that. He actually holds debates and things like that. He is a college professor at Hiram University, Hiram College then, I guess it was.
Was also quadrilingual, able to speak English, German, Greek, and Latin.
Yep.
And it gets even cooler than that. He was ambidextrous, meaning that he was good at using both his right and his left hands. To show off his bihandular prowess, he would ask his guests to give him a question that he'd then write his answer to in Latin with one hand and in Greek with the other hand at the same time.
Yep.
If that isn't an incredible show
That's
of both
nuts.
hand-eye coordination and multitasking, I don't know what is.
And just, again, this angers me to no end that we never got to see what kind of president he could have been. Second shortest term in history. We are getting, though, a TV show about this. Netflix is doing a TV series on the events that lead up to his assassination and the aftermath. We're getting Michael Shannon is playing Garfield. Matthew McFadden is playing Charles Guiteau, the guy who shot him. Both tremendous actors, so super excited about it.
The reaction times also weren't something to be overlooked. He, like many of our presidents, served in the military during part of his life, and actually fought in a few high-powered battles during the American Civil War. While there doesn't seem to be any record of his actual skills with a gun, the fact that he not only helped win the Battle of Shiloh, the bloodiest of the war, but also walked away completely uninjured shows that he must have had some level of skill when it came to firing his own weapon and avoiding others. Or, you know, maybe he just hid in the corner and camped the whole time, which again, that's a very valid gamer skill that works for a lot of people. But
now, we're not real familiar with a lot of his Civil War leadership because he actually only served in the first year or so of the war. He probably would have ended up in like a division or a corps command by the end of the war at the rate that he was going. But he actually goes home from the war to serve in Congress, gets elected to Congress, and is actually in Congress during the events of what we see in the movie Lincoln, where they vote on the 13th Amendment. He's a part of all of that.
But to top it all off, there are 2 things about Garfield that I'm sure a lot of you hashtag gamers out there can relate to. Well, he was certainly born before the invention of the video game. He was not unfamiliar with late-night gaming sessions. Turns out, he was an avid chess player, and it was said that the president, quote, enjoyed the game to the utmost, but had to deny himself even this pleasure when it repeatedly carried him into late hours of the night. If Doritos and Mountain Dew had been invented for this guy, I'm sure he would have been chowing down on those too like a true gamer.
Heck yeah.
Secondly, he proved himself to have an ability to win in unconventional ways. Sometimes he wasn't even trying to. Case in point, the way he actually became president. During the election of 1880, Garfield, then a lowly congressman cranking out mathematical proofs, went to the Republican National Convention to give a speech in support of fellow Ohioan and Secretary of State John Sherman.
Who is, by the way, the brother of General William Tecumseh Sherman. It's a big family thing. John Sherman, you can even see in his face, he looks like his brother. But at this point, 1880, I wouldn't simply describe James Garfield as a lowly congressman. He's on the national radar. In fact, before he's elected president, he's going to be elected by the Ohio legislature to be a senator from Ohio. So he actually would have served in the Senate had he not been elected president.
However, the party couldn't find a majority consensus between Sherman, former President Ulysses S. Grant, and Senator James Blaine of Maine. The party did 35 rounds of voting before they decided on a compromise, picking Garfield, who wasn't even running. Garfield just straight up Among Us'd his way into the White House. Kinda sus if you ask me, but hey, in the world of gaming, a win is a win. So there you have it, friendos. President James Garfield. You, sir, have been formally recognized and placed in the most powerful seat in all of the internet. But before we send you in to destroy Biden, Trump, and Obama in their next match at Tetris, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of gamer and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of internet memes. Wait, Garfield doesn't have himself an AI voice synthesis? Get on that, boys!
That's because we don't have a recording of his voice.
This man demands your respect. All hail to the chief, the Master Chief.
I 100% agree with his conclusions on this. I wasn't sure that I would. I figured I'd have more of a reason to debate it based on those things. But as this video was unfolding, Garfield's name kept popping up in my head. And that's why I mentioned him as many times as I did. Not at all surprised this is who he ended up with.
But hey!
Pat, why didn't I get a mention?
Because you're not a winner, Joe.
Then why wasn't I mentioned? I'm also a winner.
Shut up, Richard. People only know who you are because of Futurama.
You want to go, Barack? I'll beat you in anything. Bully, sounds like we've got a good old-fashioned game of digital fisticuffs.
And I have just the game for you guys to duke it out in. The sponsor for today's episode, Warpath.
All right, so Warpath's actually a lot of fun, but it looks like he's getting into the sponsor now. So, and a lot of people ask me the question about why I don't let the ads run on some of these. If you understand how most of these ads work, the person who runs the ad for these sponsorships, they get paid a predetermined amount. And so they're not gaining anything by me playing their ads on this reaction video. It doesn't make them any more money. So if it did, I would probably view that differently, and I would want to support them in that. But anyway, all right. With that in mind, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I'll throw some links up here at the end to some other videos about presidential history. If you want to click on those, I'll also add this to my presidential history playlist, so you can check out all of those things. Ricardo in the Netherlands and Dordrecht in Zuid-Holland, thank you so much for your support on Patreon, as well as Jeremy in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I've been there a few times. Thank you so much for your support. Couldn't do it without you. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.